Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English story. Everything changed. I never thought one moment could alter the course of my life, but it did. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon, and I was stuck in traffic, staring at the line of cars that stretched endlessly ahead of me. My mind was racing, not with thoughts of where I was going, but with where I was in life. I was 32 years old, working a job I didn't love, living paycheck to paycheck, and feeling like I was just drifting. It wasn't that I hated my life. I had friends, family, and things to be thankful for. But deep down, I felt like I was meant for something more. The routine that trapped me, every day felt the same. I'd wake up to the same blaring alarm, rush through the same morning routine, and head to the same office where I pushed papers for 8 hours. Evenings weren't much better. I'd collapse on the couch, scroll through social media, and watch other people living the lives I wished I had. Someday, I'd tell myself, someday I'll start my own business. Someday I'll take that art class. Someday I'll finally figure out what I want. But someday never came. The moment that changed it all, that Thursday afternoon, stuck in traffic, I heard something on the radio that made me pause. It was a caller sharing their story about how they had quit their corporate job to pursue their passion for baking. It was scary, the caller admitted. But the fear of staying the same was scarier. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. The fear of staying the same. I sat there in silence, gripping the steering wheel, as the cars inched forward. For the first time, I asked myself, what if nothing changes? What if I'm still here, in this same traffic, living this same life? 5 years from now? 10? The thought terrified me. A wake-up call. That night, I couldn't sleep. The caller's words kept echoing in my mind. I thought about all the dreams I'd buried under excuses and fears. The truth was, I had been waiting for something or someone to give me permission to change. But no one was coming to save me. If I wanted a different life, I had to be the one to create it. Lying there in the dark, I made a decision. It wasn't a grand plan or a bold move. It was a small, quiet promise to myself. I'm going to start. I didn't know what starting looked like yet. But for the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope. That night, everything changed, not because my circumstances were different, but because my mindset was. And that was the beginning of a journey I never saw coming. The first step. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, something I hadn't done in years. The air felt different, like the world had shifted ever so slightly. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. You've been waiting long enough, I whispered to myself. The first thing I did was grab a notebook and write down everything I wanted to do, no matter how unrealistic or small. The list felt overwhelming at first. Start my own business, learn a new skill, travel to new places, and, most importantly, feel alive again. But as I stared at the list, one thing stood out. Writing had always been my escape when I was younger. I used to fill journals with poems, short stories, and random musings about life. Somewhere along the way, I'd abandoned it, convinced it wasn't practical or worth pursuing. That morning, I made a decision. Writing would be my first step. Dusting off old dreams, I dug through old boxes in my closet and found a leather-bound journal that still smelled faintly of the bookstore where I'd bought it years ago. Its pages were blank, untouched, waiting. With a pen in hand, I sat down at my kitchen table and started to write. It wasn't perfect, far from it. The words stumbled out awkwardly, and I felt rusty. But it didn't matter. For the first time in years, I was doing something that felt like me. Doubt creeps in. Doubt didn't take long to show up. By the second day, my inner critic was loud and relentless. This is a waste of time. It sneered. Who do you think you are? Trying to be a writer? No one's going to care about what you have to say. I almost stopped. Almost. But then I remembered the radio caller's words. The fear of staying the same was scarier. So I kept writing. Each day, I sat down with my journal, even if it was just for 10 minutes. Slowly, the doubts didn't feel so powerful. Small changes, big impact. As the days turned into weeks, other small changes started to happen. I stopped scrolling endlessly on my phone and used that time to read books about writing and creativity. I signed up for a free online writing workshop. Even though the idea of sharing my work with strangers terrified me. And something incredible happened. I started to feel alive again. It wasn't about the writing itself, it was about what it represented. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for life to happen to me. I was creating it. The power of starting. One evening, I looked back at the first page of my journal. My handwriting was shaky, my words hesitant, but they were there. And I realized something profound. The hardest part wasn't the writing. It was deciding to begin. And taking that first step. I'd already overcome the biggest obstacle, my own fear. Everything else was just part of the journey. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see where it would lead. Moral. The story reminds us that change begins with a single decision to take action. No matter how small. It's not about having everything figured out or waiting for the perfect moment. It's about daring to start. Often, the hardest battle we face is with our own fears and doubts. But overcoming them can open doors to a life filled with purpose and passion. Part 3. Breaking the cycle. Weeks turned into months. And my simple habit of writing every day transformed my perspective on life. My journal became a safe space where I could dream, reflect, and pour out thoughts I didn't even realize I had. But more importantly, it became a symbol of something deeper. Progress. It wasn't just about the words on the page, it was about proving to myself that I could stick with something. For years, I had been trapped in a cycle of starting things and giving up halfway through. But this time, I didn't stop. Facing fear head-on. One day, I stumbled upon a local contest for amateur writers. The idea of sharing my work with others terrified me. My inner critic was back in full force, whispering, You're not good enough. People will laugh at you. But I had come too far to let fear win again. I reminded myself of a lesson I'd written in my journal just weeks earlier. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. With trembling hands, I submitted a short story. Hitting send felt like jumping off a cliff. But it also felt exhilarating. The ripple effect. The contest didn't just push me out of my comfort zone. It created a ripple effect in my life. While I didn't win, the feedback I received was encouraging and constructive. For the first time, I saw my potential, not just my flaws. That small taste of validation fueled me to keep going. I started attending writing meetups, connecting with people who shared my passion. Their stories and struggles mirrored my own. And being part of that community gave me the strength to continue. Beyond writing, interestingly, the confidence I gained from writing began to spill over into other areas of my life. I started speaking up more at work, sharing ideas I would have kept to myself before. I reconnected with old friends and even tried out a new hobby, painting just for fun. My days were no longer about merely surviving. They were about living with intention. The moment I realized everything had changed, one evening, I came across the list I had written on that pivotal morning months ago. It had been buried under a stack of papers, forgotten in the whirlwind of my new routine. As I read through the list, I was stunned to see how much I had accomplished. Write had been crossed off, along with try something new and find a community. I sat there, tears welling in my eyes, realizing something profound. The person who had written that list wasn't the same person reading it now. The small, shaky promise I had made to myself had grown into a full-blown transformation. A new beginning. That night, I opened my journal to a fresh page and wrote, "You took the first step. You kept going. And now, you're living proof that it's never too late to change your life." It wasn't the end of my journey, far from it. But it was a reminder of how far I had come. Because everything had changed. And it all started with one decision to believe in myself. Moral. The story teaches us that growth and transformation start from within. When we challenge our fears, take small steps, and stay consistent, we unlock a version of ourselves we never knew existed. It's not about instant results but about trusting the process and believing in the power of persistence. Every little effort counts. And even the smallest decision can lead to profound change. Part 4. Sharing the journey. As I continued to grow, I realized something that hadn't crossed my mind before. My story might inspire others. One day, during a casual conversation with a colleague, I mentioned my writing journey. To my surprise, their eyes lit up. "I've always wanted to write, but I don't know where to start," they admitted. Hearing those words reminded me of where I had been just a few months ago, afraid to begin, paralyzed by the thought of failure. I shared my experience with them, emphasizing the importance of just starting, no matter how imperfect it seemed. "You don't need to have it all figured out," I told them. Take one step. Just one. From inspiration to action, that conversation sparked something I hadn't anticipated. People started coming to me for advice. Friends, colleagues, even acquaintances would ask how I found the courage to pursue my passion. First, it felt surreal. I didn't see myself as someone who had made it. But then I realized that wasn't the point. It wasn't about being at the finish line. It was about showing others that the journey was worth taking. To reach more people, I started a blog. It was nothing fancy. Just a simple space where I shared my struggles, victories, and lessons. Writing for an audience felt different from journaling, but it was deeply fulfilling. Building a community, the blog began to attract readers. Some were strangers. Others were people I hadn't spoken to in years. They left comments, shared their stories, and thanked me for being honest about my fears and failures. One message stood out. Your story made me realize I've been waiting too long to chase my dreams. Thank you for reminding me it's never too late. That message hit me hard. I wasn't just writing for myself anymore. I was creating a ripple effect. Overcoming new challenges. Fourth, the journey wasn't without its struggles. Balancing my writing with my day job, social life, and personal growth wasn't easy. There were days I doubted myself, moments when I wanted to quit. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered why I started. I wasn't just chasing a dream, I was reclaiming my life. The bigger picture. One evening, while working on a blog post, I paused to reflect on how much had changed. I thought about the old version of me, the one who had sat in traffic feeling stuck and hopeless. If I could talk to that person now, I'd tell them this: you're stronger than you think. The life you want is possible, but you have to take the first step. No one else can do it for you. And in that moment, I realized something profound. My journey wasn't just about me. It was about helping others realize their potential, too. Because when you change your life, you give others permission to change theirs. Moral. The story reinforces the idea that personal transformation is not just about achieving your dreams, but also about inspiring others to believe in themselves. By sharing your journey, you create a ripple effect that empowers people around you. It reminds us that every step, no matter how small, can lead to a greater purpose, not just for ourselves, but for the community we build along the way. Part 5. The ripple becomes a wave. Months turned into a year, and my blog gained unexpected traction. What had started as a personal outlet turned into a platform that connected hundreds of people. Readers from different walks of life shared how my story inspired them to take the first step toward their own dreams. One day, I received an email that left me speechless. It was from a local community center, inviting me to speak at an event about personal growth and overcoming fear. First, my gut reaction was to decline. Public speaking wasn't something I had ever envisioned for myself. The thought of standing in front of a crowd made my hands tremble. But then I remembered the promise I had made to myself: to stop letting fear dictate my life. Stepping onto the stage. On the day of the event, I stood backstage, heart pounding and palms sweaty. As I looked out at the audience, I saw faces full of curiosity and hope. These weren't strangers, they were people just like me, searching for a way forward. When I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight felt blinding at first. But as I began to speak, something incredible happened. I felt the weight of fear lift. I shared my story, the struggles, the doubts, and the triumphs. I talked about the power of small steps and how they had changed my life. The audience nodded, smiled, and even teared up at moments. When I finished, the room erupted into applause. But it wasn't the applause that moved me, it was the conversations afterward. A chain reaction. One woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Your story gave me the courage to start again," she said. "I've been putting off going back to school for years because I thought it was too late for me. But now, I feel like I can do it." Another man shared how he had always wanted to start his own business but feared failure. "Hearing you talk about your first step reminded me that I don't have to have it all figured out," he said. "I just need to begin." It hit me then. This was bigger than me. My journey wasn't just about personal growth, it was about creating a movement of people who believed in the power of starting over, paying it forward. From that day on, I made it my mission to help others. I started hosting workshops, collaborating with local organizations, and even mentoring individuals who felt stuck in their own lives. Each success story I heard, each person who dared to take their first step, felt like a victory for us all. I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was helping to rebuild others' lives, too. A life transformed as I sat at my desk one evening, writing a new blog post. I glanced at the original list I had made on that fateful morning. Not only had I crossed off every goal, but I had also added new ones I never dreamed of before, goals that went beyond myself. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, fulfilling, and full of purpose. Because I had learned one simple truth. When you take the first step to invest in yourself, you create the opportunity to change not only your own life but the lives of countless others. And it all starts with one decision. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. If you like the story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Take care, and see you next time.